Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I am so thrilled that you are here with us today because I have got another exciting conversation, this time with an educator who has been working with children for over 40 years. She has written a book for parents, educators, and physicians to help them identify not what's wrong with children, but what's right. My guest today is Dr. Victoria Waller. She helps parents identify their children's passions, interests, and strengths, and teaches them how to use that information to help kids unlock their creativity and reach their full potential. I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. Let's jump in.
Millions of kids struggle with learning, processing, and social emotional difficulties. These challenges interfere with their ability to reach their full potential. Dr. Karen Wilson is here to help. Her extensive background in pediatric neuropsychology and higher education have prepared her for this unique mission. Listen as she delivers content to inform, educate, and empower parents and educators. This will enable you to identify challenges that kids face and get them on the road to achieving their full potential. This is Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus.
Hello, Dr. Victoria Waller. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so happy to be here, Karen. So happy.
I'm so excited that we finally got to meet at IDALA. How strange was that, that we walked in that conference and found each other?
Well, it had to have been within 1 or 2 days that I had looked you up and I thought I want to be on that person's podcast. And then I walked in and you were there and I was not even putting together, sure, Vicki, she's in LA, 2 minutes from your house. I was so excited.
It was so great. It was so great to meet you. And then for you to send me, I think it was like a pre-release copy of your book before it was even like available on Amazon. Right. I think it was in pre-release.
Yes, it still is till June 7th. You can pre-order it on or any bookstore. It's at any of the bookstores and Amazon.
Well, we're going to be talking about your book today. I'm so excited. Your book is titled, Yes, Your Child Can, Creating Success for Children with Learning Differences. And like you said, it's available now for pre-order. First, congratulations on getting this book out. It is fabulous. I appreciate you sending me a copy. It's just such an easy read for parents. And I just love how it takes you on a step-by-step journey, starting with he'll snap out of it, or what I often hear is he'll grow out of it.
Right.
And in your book, you talk a great deal about unlocking a child's creativity and helping children and adolescents reach their potential. So tell me about what led you to write this book first. Let's start there.
Well, it's really sort of interesting. I've worked with children with learning differences for over 40 years. And I've always called them differences, by the way. I never called it learning disabilities even 40 years ago because the kids I saw didn't have disabilities. They had unbelievable abilities. And I thought it was so amazing because I was coming from a master's degree, a doctorate, and they're talking about disabilities. So I never said that. And I still don't say it. They have differences, but they have so many positives. Oh, my goodness. And I think because I teach them, I've taught them for so long, that I look at people like Elon Musk, Scott Kelly, Anderson Cooper. These are geniuses of our times. And my book is to help parents know that children can learn and become successful and happy. Happy is the word. We diagnose them early. We get them help when they need it, but we use their passions and strengths to teach them. We have to find out what's right with these children, not what's wrong with them. I have to tell you something that happened that was very upsetting the last few weeks. And I talked to Dr. Ned Hallowell about it. He's a very big ADHD medical doctor and author. And I said to him, understood.org gave a percentage. 48% of parents right now believe that their children will snap out of it. And 33% of educators think the kids with differences are lazy. I was so upset, I can't tell you. And I talked to Dr. Hallowell, and you know what he said? We sure have a lot more work to do. And we do.
We absolutely do.
In my book, I say to my parents, they'd say, I've read every ADHD book, and I open it up and I see a brain and I close the book. And I thought, okay, then I have to write something that will help them. I had been working with a student here in LA, and the principal said, you have to write a report every time you see him. I had never had that before. Well, after several years, I had 356 pages, and her name is Joan Martin, and she was at Crossroads School. And she said, this is a book. She kept saying, this is a book, this is a book. And I took it, all the pages, and I took it to an editor that somebody had given me, and I took it to her, and she said, oh, the story's wonderful. How's that going to help anybody? I thought, that's so depressing. Like, what did I do? I don't understand. And I went home, put the book away, and that was the end of it. All of a sudden, two things happened. A mother comes to the door. I look out the window, and I'm thinking, what is this mother doing in the afternoon? I open the door. She looks like somebody died. She looks like, and she's crying. I went, stop, please tell me what happened. I went to a meeting about my son, and they said, I have to take him to a brain doctor. Vicki, what's wrong with his brain? This child at 7 knew everything about every animal that's ever been on this earth. You could ask him about a tiger. He'd tell you about a tiger. Could he read or write? No. Did he have some attention issues? Yes. And I said, no. I said, honestly, and I tried to take her through what's going to happen, how to get him ready. Don't tell him he's being tested by a brain doctor. Just say he's going to be with somebody who's going to read with him and just make it easy. Okay, that happened. Second thing happened within 2 weeks, the doorbell rings. I looked through the people and there's, honest to God, a kid. He's not a kid. He must be 6'3" maybe. And he said, Dr. Waller. So I opened the door. He said, Dr. Waller, I've come to thank you. I said, who are you? He said, Dexter. I was so shocked. Okay, Dexter was a kid who could do at 7 years old. He could he could make clay figures and actually film an animated film and then direct everybody around him how to do everything. And I said, well, why are you here? He said, I came to thank you. He said, he said, the school told my mom that I was never going to learn. I should put me in a special school. And you told her, get him tested and take him to a better school who will understand him. He said, I just wanted to tell you, I got two masters, one from Yale, one from Clark. And he said, I just finished my doctorate and I'm going for a postdoc. I said, well, what's your strength? What was your passion? You used to love directing. Trees. I said, what? Trees. Well, he's an environmental person and he's one of the biggest people in the country, has all these papers that he's written about trees and helping the environment in all the different places. And I realized the book had to be a step-by-step for parents, educators, and doctors too. With early intervention, when you have that gut feeling, when you have it, you have to get your child help. They're not going to snap out of it. And if you wait too long, they get very unhappy because they think they're stupid. And so that's what I did.
Yeah. And I think that's really important that you take them on that journey. And I love the examples that you give because I think parents can see their children in the children that you just described. And it's not about just pathologizing the difficulties. It's like you said, it's about unlocking a child's creativity and really recognizing their strengths. Because I can't tell you how many parents who come in to see me and to see some of my colleagues who want to identify what's wrong because their kids are struggling. But I tell them, we're going to get a profile of your child's strengths and weaknesses, because without the strengths, we don't know how exactly to help them. That will actually help us help them when we know what can they use to compensate for areas of weakness. And so I love that you talked about that. The other thing I really love is that you start with is that gut feeling, because I can't tell you how many parents I've seen who say the teachers say he's fine, and like you're saying, he'll snap out of it, he'll grow out of it, or he's lazy. But I have in my gut a feeling that something is going on with my child. I don't know what it is, but I want you to help me figure out what that is.
What I find really the most unusual is that the parents are so worried and so upset that when I say, on the phone, I'll say, what are your child's strengths? And they're quiet. And I go, well, and they go, well, he can't read, can't write. I went, no. What does he like to do? I had a mother come in just a couple of months ago. And on the phone, she said, well, I don't know. Well, he sort of likes to do Legos. I thought, okay, a lot of kids like to do Legos. He comes in and I had a little tiny Lego set for him. I thought, he could play with or whatever. And I said, oh, what kind of Legos, do you build? And he said, oh, those big ones that have 10,000 pieces. I went, what? I said, I can't put this piece with 25 together, but how do you do it if you don't read? He said, you don't have to read. I look at the picture. I said, but they're 10,000 pieces. Those spaceships are enormous. Okay, that was the first thing he did. Then he went and he loves whales and sharks. He knows all about them. Well, the man from last June, the lobster fisherman who got caught in a whale's mouth, was all over the newspaper. So I read him these articles and he was fascinated. I said, let's call him. We have Google now. I Googled him and I called him. And I said, would you be willing to be interviewed by my student? He said, I'd love it. People are really nice. So he had to give me questions. He wanted me to type them for him. I said, fine. I wasn't bothering him yet with reading and writing. I typed the questions. This child, who we thought had nothing really great about him, except he can't read and write. That's what the mother said. He sat on a Zoom with a person. And we read all about him too, Michael Packard. He sat like a real interviewer. He interviewed him. He asked the question. He waited for the answer. He would laugh because Michael's very funny. And he found out all about, well, it was fascinating to me. He got caught in a whale's mouth. And the boy was funny because he said, well, Vicki, he wouldn't be eaten by him because whales have baleen. They don't have teeth. And I went, oh, yeah, you're right. It was so phenomenal. And from that point on, we went through, he's just blooming. He's just blossoming like you can't believe. He just felt so good. And he went and made, well, I can show you, out of clay, a whale with the feet hanging out of his mouth. He is so creative. He has so many positives, but the mom was so upset because he was oppositional defiant. I don't want to do it. But now that he was seeing he could do something, now I can start teaching him to read better and write. He didn't want to write at all. Now I have him writing. He has trouble with spelling. It's okay. But it's just very interesting when you find a child like that.
Very interesting, Vicki, and also very empowering for that child, to have that experience and to also have you recognize his strengths when you talk about the the spaceship Lego that he's able to build with all of those pieces. Because, when kids are struggling, so often the emphasis is on the struggle, right? And how do we get them support? Right. And we have to pay attention, equal attention, and sometimes even more attention to the things that they can do, which is why I love the name of your book, right? Yes, you can,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And sometimes we have to look for those and give them opportunities to develop their talents and their skills. And that's why I think that getting kids the right support and in the right school is so important, because what I often don't like to see is kids who are at school all day and then they have therapies all into the night to the detriment of all of their extracurricular activities and the development of their talents. What are your thoughts on that?
I try to tell, a lot of my kids do have speech issues, and we try to get them reading a little bit before I start getting more people that they have to meet with. But the speech is important to me because they have a hard time spelling. When the student came into me, it was now he's like an all-A student at 8th grade, and he's amazing. He has 40,000 followers on Instagram or something. I thought, I have 20 and you have 40,000. How do you do it? He's very creative and very interesting. And when he came in, he was just so negative and scared. They get really, I think because we're looking for what parents see what they can't do, and they're not thinking about what they can do. It's very interesting. And I find it the same everywhere. It's the same. And I try to use, it's funny because I was thinking about this whole, I was called a rock star tutor, which I think is so funny. I was given that title. And I'm from Detroit, Motown. And I can remember my first class. I had inner city of Detroit, 40 kids, mostly boys too, which now that I think of it was sort of weird, fourth graders. And somebody said, "You're going to hate this class. They're all, this was over 40 years ago. They don't pay attention." Well, I walk into this class, don't pay attention. There wasn't one book in the class. How does the school, this was the real inner city, no books, no pencils, papers, markers, and they were studying, I think, the Revolutionary War. I'm going, what? This is not what these kids are about. That was just when I started going out to everybody and asking for freebies. And I'm still doing it. Like I asked people to be interviewed. I went to stores and said, "I'm working with these kids. I need markers. I need pencils. I need everything I can get." And I had them write letters. We didn't have email. Write letters and find their relatives. Every kid in that class found a relative. They wrote letters to the relative. The relative sent things back. And we made I wanted them to know the United States. We had a huge map and we pinned up all the letters. And then I taught them to read using Motown songs. And in those days, you had to type the lyrics yourself on a typewriter. And I did. I found blends and digraphs and anything you wanted using that. And it was phenomenal. We sang, and the principal would come by and he would close the door. And then I would open the door. We were singing Motown, too bad. And he knew, I showed him all my lesson plans. So he couldn't say she's not teaching them blends and digraphs. I was just using little music.
Right. And when you do that, you connect their interests or even sparking interests, and you're connecting it to learning. So they're learning at the same time, which is such a great way to engage students, right?
It's amazing.
Yeah. And we have a lot of students who do struggle. And, when I said that, I don't want them to be spending time all into the evening on intervention, I absolutely believe that kids who need speech should absolutely have speech therapy or occupational therapy.
The thing is, they have to, because when you're on the computer, the word has to have some semblance of a word. My student came and he wrote, I think it was GHT. That was the spell check isn't getting that one. They have to do that. I don't do it right away. Let them start with me, but usually within a couple of weeks, I find what they love to do. And they say, like the mother just wrote me. She says, "You made him so happy today. He's so miserable all the time. And he comes from you and he's happy." Because I try to find his strengths and passions and then teach him using that.
Right. And that's where there has to be a balance, right? A lot of kids need speech. They need OT. They need educational therapy, but they also need guitar. They need to be able to play basketball. They need to be able to swim. They have to be able to do the other things that they enjoy and develop those talents as well.
Yeah, I always push that.
Absolutely.
And what's funny? Many of them are artists in different ways. They can create I use a lot of junk. I use old cameras and I buy the old cameras on eBay and they make the character from the book we're reading out of a camera. And I have all junk in my garage that they can put on it. I collect a lot of junk and Amazon boxes. So they're able to create and feel good. But of course, then I make them write a story about that.
Right.
But they can dictate the story. And I use their writing to teach them.
Absolutely. And you started by saying, that we don't want to just identify what's wrong, but what's right, which I think is so important. And why do you think it's so important for parents to identify their children's passions, interests, and strengths? Because I completely agree that this is often overlooked. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
It's overlooked because the parents are so nervous. They're so afraid. And what's interesting, I found out with most of the parents, there's always one of the parents or it's in the family that somebody has maybe attention issues or learning it had them. And that's why they're saying, well, I did fine. But some people don't do fine. And you really need to find and I think parents it's not their fault. They're so worried about why isn't he learning? Why does the teacher keep sending home notes? That's all they do is, and I have a parent, she called me and she said I was the 26th tutor that she called.
Oh
She
my goodness.
interviewed. In my book, something that everybody seems to like the best is that besides the step-by-step exactly what you have to do, who is the person they're having you get tested by? What is that person? What should I say to the person? And I'm telling the parents, before you take a child to be, he's going to miss school and he's going to be tested, don't be hysterical at the dinner table with your husband. Just say, this is just like somebody from school. Be honest. They're going to ask you questions and things you like to do. Maybe pack a snack for them. I try to give the parents, you know what it's like? What to expect when you're expecting. That's a book that takes a woman on a step-by-step month of what's going to happen when she's pregnant. And that's what I do. I start with, okay, the gut feeling. I go on to early intervention. Please don't wait till they're 12. Early intervention. I talk about the types of testing. Don't be afraid of that. Who are the people that they might be given to be tested? Every chapter is to help them. Hiring the right person, like the mother who, I was the 26th tutor. Getting past the fear of medication. Do you have a problem with that? The parents and the medication, they don't want to put their child on medication. He's going to become a drug addict. And you know what? We've now found out the kids who there's so many good medications now. The kids who get put on medication and find success and happiness, they do fine. But the kids that never go on medication and are really either inattentive or hyper, they don't learn well, they're the ones that at 14, 15, 16 start using medication to fix it, and it doesn't get fixed. So I try to go through everything. I even go through reading, writing, executive functioning. I go through every step that a parent will take, and I tell them, and if they're reading the chapter, at the end of the chapter, I'll have a takeaway, and then I have little lists in blue boxes. Ask the tutor you're interviewing these 5 questions. So all they have to do is look in that chapter, and there are the 5 questions. So it's an easy book to get through. This is not filled with medical terms. I'm not a medical doctor.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's such a great book for parents who are either starting on the journey, who are thinking that their kids are struggling, and those whose kids have already been identified and need to know kind of what steps. So if a parent is listening or an educator is listening right now, what are some things that they can do early on to help children who they suspect are thinking differently, learning differently, and are struggling despite their strengths and despite how smart they seem and are? Not just seem, they are smart, but you can be smart and still struggle.
Oh, I personally think I call my students geniuses of our time. They're like Elon Musk. They're like Anderson Cooper. Elon Musk got on the spaceship a couple months ago. They said, what was the biggest thing about being in the spaceship for 10 minutes? And he said, this is the one thing he said. Well, he said, if you unbuckle your seatbelt, you'll be able to float around. But I have learning differences and attention differences. And I unbuckled my parachute instead of my seatbelt because he did the left to the right.
Right.
But I really think parents have to just accept the child, think about what they're good at. Oh, please think about it. It's when the child came and the mom was so worried, they're always worried. And I said, well, what is he? She said Legos. That's all she could say about him. And there were so many positives. And he did that whale out of clay. And he drew a picture of my dog. You wouldn't believe it. And he brought it to me. He said, I thought you would like this. He has so many strengths. It's unbelievable. But the mom's scared. Why do they keep telling me he's not reading? And he's oppositional defiant. But that's just, he's just afraid. And he's really stopped being so oppositional defiant now, which is really sort of neat. But I think it's just finding those strengths and weaknesses. And the book, even for parents, but it's also for even people who test the children, to even, sometimes they go into a testing situation, the person just starts testing. Hang out with the kid for a few minutes. Talk to him about what he likes. Do you like sports? I think the book is for medical doctors. I think it's for people who test the children. It's for teachers. It's for colleges. What are we teaching in colleges to all the people who are becoming teachers? And we still hear people say to me, oh, he can't read. Oh, he can't. And I know there's something there. There's never been a kid that I haven't found something that they're good at.
Mm-hmm. And that's so important for parents to hear. I mean, you're giving them actionable steps. You're validating their concerns, that gut feeling that they have. You're also showing them that there are things that we can do. You talk about, building a community, the importance of that community of specialists, of parents, of educators coming together to support that child. But while you are doing that, you're building that child's self-confidence, and you are helping to unlock those passions and those strengths that they have so that they can demonstrate their talents in a different way.
It's interesting. Two things happened a couple of weeks ago. It's Passover in the Jewish religion, and Passover is a trauma for my Jewish kids because you go around the table and you have to read. And I tell my parents, pick a paragraph before that's going to be your child's paragraph. But if they haven't been with me, they don't know that. And many years ago, I got an email from this child. Now he's 17. He's 6'3". I just saw him the other day. All A's. He's getting all A's. He's on medication. He's getting help and fine. But it was 10 years ago. And I get an email from the dad, 10 o'clock on a Passover evening. And it says, call me ASAP. I'm crying. I thought, oh my God, the kid probably couldn't read at the Passover table, maybe cried. He was 7 years old. So the father, I called the father, and he said, and I wrote to him just last week, and I said, I'm remembering that night how you were so upset, because he said, no, it wasn't that he read at the table, which he did. It was that I'm going to cry. You gave him a gift of confidence. So you mentioned the word confidence, and the father had just mentioned it to me. He said, you gave him, that's a lifelong thing. And I think we see that now. We go to a party or a meeting, and there's somebody who seems so smart. It's the way, if they have confidence, you're more involved with what they're saying than if they just have a high IQ. So the confidence, which you said, is just so important. It's giving them, it's funny, I try to get to the teachers also, and I have meetings with the teachers. And this one teacher gave my third grade boy, he was supposed to study strawberries. Now, I've been in her classroom. She's an older, well, I'm old, so I don't know. She was older at the time, sits at the front of the room, very, all the desks in a row. And I thought, oh, she's so boring. But I liked her. There was something about her that I liked and loved the way she was with the children. And I thought, it's okay, read from a book. She's great. And that child, he said strawberries, and I laughed. So he knew everything about roller coasters. First child that ever knew about roller coasters. So I wrote her an email and I said, could he do roller coasters instead of strawberries? She wrote back, sure. So instead of making him miserable, not only did he know about roller coasters, he built a life-size roller coasters with the dimensions. I don't know how you do that, like 5 feet is 1 inch or something. His mother took him to Cedar Point in Ohio. They went to the roller coaster park. I got hold of the president. He got to interview the president of the roller coaster park. And it's funny, I wonder now if he's still, I know he goes to see his grandmother every summer, so he goes to Cedar Point. But that was a kid and a teacher. The teacher said, sure, let him do roller coasters. And she later said to me that was the most interesting report we had. But some teachers won't let you do that.
Right.
They'll say, no, I gave him strawberries. Can you imagine a third grader boy anybody wants to write about strawberries?
Right. But that really speaks to, we want our teachers to be flexible. If the point is practicing those oral skills, those expressive language skills, then does it really matter if it's strawberries or roller coasters?
And he had to write. It was very executive functioning because he had to look it up and he had to write. But he looked up everything on roller coasters. That was easy.
Right. And then also I think it's important to have parents who will advocate for their kids, who won't just get the strawberry assignment and assume that's the only thing that he can write about, but to ask, is it possible that he could write about something else? And that speaks to your other point about being afraid, right?
The parents are afraid if they go in and make a stink, the teacher won't be nice to their child. But if it's done in a nice way, or you see, I say a lot, if you have a therapist, you let the therapist just write an email to the teacher. This would be so nice. Parents are really afraid to use therapists like that, but they should. Let them do it. Don't you do it because you want to stay as The other thing is the parents, when they have a child who has issues, in August, they're writing the new teacher. And I went, wait. Don't write. I've been a teacher for many, many years in a classroom. Do not write a teacher in August because that teacher is worrying about where's the paper and pencils and the books and what are we going to do and what's my lesson. She doesn't want to hear about your kid who has oh no, I've got a child with attention issues. You wait a couple weeks or you write at the beginning a little email and you say, I do have a child who has differences. And when we can make an appointment later in September, I'd like to meet you. I said, do not do it early because the teacher doesn't know who he is. You have to give them time.
Right. Vicki, I love your book and I think it's going to help so many parents, so many educators, and frankly, a number of clinicians who are needing the language because, sometimes we can use language that parents don't understand, but I think you've given language to a lot of professionals to discuss learning differences and support to parents and even other educators. In your book, I think it was chapter 20, you end with a word of hope. I would love for you to just the people who are listening today, a word of hope, some final thoughts that you might have to kind of wrap up this conversation, which, by the way, we could talk about for another 30 minutes.
Right. The hope is you have to realize that your child is smart and has abilities. Yeah, they have some differences, but they have abilities somewhere in that little brain. There are abilities. And you have to take that out of them and you have to find out what's right with them, not what's wrong with them. Believe me, you know what's wrong with them. You have to look for those right things and try to use them. I must say, honest to goodness, I bet I have 100%. And that's not being obnoxious. It's being honest that if I find the child's strengths and passions and I talk to the parents, I tell you, I talk to the parents maybe as much as I talk to the children. You have to find the strengths of these children and use those to then say, okay, you have to go to tutoring today, but she'll have something good for you to do. And when they see it, the little girl wrote just about 3 weeks ago, I've worked with her for a year because during COVID and stuff. And she wrote, the teacher had said, write 5 good things about yourself. And her first thing was, I'm smart like Vicki says I am. That to me was absolutely, now we're on the road. She really believes I really am smart because the kids come to me and they don't feel good about themselves. And you can't just say, oh, you're doing good work. They have to see that they can read. And my favorite thing is when I see her, she'll say, okay, come on, I want to read another chapter in the book. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like heaven. She still doesn't want to write so much, but she has good ideas. My kids all have good ideas. They have trouble writing and spelling.
Vicki, thank you so much. Thank you so much for writing this book. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. I'm going to put a link to your book in the show notes so people can get it. I'm encouraging people to get it, and also a link to your website so people can check in with you. What is the best way for people to reach you if they want to speak with you further or get more information or even have you work with their child?
Yeah, I think that's good. If they go to the website, they'll see it's Dr. Victoria Waller at Gmail, DrVictoriaWaller Gmail, and I'll reply right away to them. And I do have a website they can look at and see what the kinds of things I do with the children and what I believe in. I believe they all can succeed. I do.
Thank you so much, Vicki. I appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus. For more resources, visit us online at childnexus.com.